We've got a box full of second-hand Honda parts, wiring parts. How dare they? How dare they interrupt?
Just in the street forever.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of my Honda Shadow project. Last week we were doing wiring and we wanted to wire in the charging system as well as the starter system. But we didn't have the full wiring diagram, we just had the diagrams for the two separate systems. So it was really difficult to find where all the wires went because a lot of them converge into each other and some of the colours have been changed. Obviously all the wiring has been cut. We had a look last week into buying some new parts, but parts for the Shadow are not cheap. The wiring harness alone was like 200 plus quid. Plus then shipping and everything. So we're going to try and wire our own harness, which means a lot of work. Also got a box full of Honda parts, as much wiring parts as I could get. I think we've practically got everything now. Obviously it was cheaper to get all of the parts from here, however the amount of faffing and hassling and following people and running around and general logistics was insane. Okay, so to start off with, I've got post-its, I've got disgustingly illegible handwriting. I am going to go through and label up every single wire so I know exactly where it's supposed to go and where it came from using the wiring diagram. Then I know what to wire up together for the start system.
Take a moment right here, feeling like it's out gear, driving towards the sun.
All 10 of the ICM wires, all of these are from the pulse generator, all of them together. It's been pretty difficult because rather than just unplug things or even just cut and rejoin like they've done for some of the wires, for the ICM everything's just been cut out. And then they've cut some random wires as well and just left them hanging. The back ignition coil is completely, just the wires were just kind of tangled inside. They've been completely cut off, so I'll put those there separately. One of them goes to the ICM. There's no fuse box, but I found the plugs for the fuse boxes. And then this cable here, this red and blue, I just need to label that off because that goes to the ignition switch. I'm going to take a break. It's going to start going dark soon. I'll be back tomorrow to finish off labeling. Labeling is finished actually. I'm not doing any labeling. I'll be here tomorrow to fit the connectors for the ICM and also to fit the front and rear ignition coils. I think that's probably the best thing to do. So tomorrow we'll be joining wires. So it is the next day and we managed to get yesterday all of the wires labelled up, everything for the starter and ignition systems. So today I was going to solder everything together, get all the pieces back together, make sure all of the wires go to the right place. I asked Dad to come over and have a look and check that everything, the wiring was right. It's always good to have a fresh pair of eyes look over what you're doing, especially when you're doing it for the first time. But we have, however, come across a problem, and the problem is the neutral switch. So after we tested the side stand switch, which works, thank God, and the side switch will just stop the bike from running whilst the stand is down, so you don't accidentally drive off with your stand down, which is obviously very dangerous. So the neutral switch is kind of another safety feature on the bike. That does, and what it means is that the bike won't start unless it's in neutral. So a lot of riders do actually bypass this switch altogether, that and the side stand switch. I've seen some people do it. But more so the neutral switch than the side stand switch. One of you guys actually did send me a wiring diagram with the neutral switch bypass, which was actually really useful. So thank you for that. But my dad said that he kind of wants to keep the neutral switch a part of the bike, and I'll tell you why. Here it's a bit different. If you leave your bike parked on the side of the road, people are very friendly here and will want to sit on it, you know, like caress the seat with the butt cheeks, give it a bit of a throttle even though the bike's not running, so I'm not sure why. And if they happen to accidentally then put the bike into gear whilst you're not there, you wouldn't know. Now if you're not expecting it and you've disabled your neutral switch, if you then start the bike will start and drive off, or you yourself have accidentally put it into gear without realising, the bike won't start unless it's in neutral. Because then even when we do wire in a remote start, which I think my dad probably will do because all his bikes are remote start. Now remote start is really great because it means that once you've come out from wherever you've gone in, especially if the bike's been sat for a long time, you can start it on your way, like for example if you're in the car park, you can start it remotely. When you get out of the store, by the time you get to the bike it would have warmed up a bit, you don't have to sit down and wait for it. It might actually be the neutral switch itself, in which case we're going to have to buy a new one and Honda parts are not cheap. It actually being the neutral switch itself, in which case we're gonna have to buy a new one, and Honda parts are not cheap, because just like everything else on the bike, someone could have just cut it and thought, oh, I'll just bypass it. It might already have been bypassed. So we need to figure out if it is already bypassed, and if it is, we can just rejoin it. If it isn't, that's the new neutral switch. And another conversation that I need to have with him about whether or not he wants that part, because it's expensive. Oh, there he goes. See, remote start. Let's go see. See now I have a problem. No? Huh? That's my issue. I've got bad influences at home. So I got to have a look at that. I think it was last weekend. Dad programmed the tune of death into his speed triple. And the triple before, it's got like a growl to it. You kind of feel it coming. Now it's like with all the extra pops and bangs and the flame outs, it's really cool. Really interesting looking at mapping and how you can kind of tune all the different things on a bike, and especially the newer bikes, you kind of see them, and from the factory they're just completely engineered to perfection, where the older bikes are a lot more mechanical, especially if they don't have a programmable ECU. So yeah, mapping was definitely something that I could see myself getting into if I knew how to do it. So yeah, maybe one day let's get back to Shadow. Right, so let's see, after we put some gloves on, because Lord only knows what's hiding in there. And okay, so when we test it now, make sure it's plugged into it. Green and red side, it touches to an earth, nothing. Okay, can't see it. I need a flashlight. Oh, it'd be really easy if the mic was held up. Oh, it's just not plugged in. This is very precarious. And my dad's watching too. There we go. I think it's in. Are we in? Clicked. Let's try it now. Neutral. What's this side? Earth it. Does it help if I'm holding it? Yay! So I don't need to go and beg for more money for a neutral switch. Yay! And it just wasn't plugged in. Which means everything is correct now and being checked. I can start wiring in the ignition system and the start system. We'll start with the start system. We'll solder up all the wires for those. And then we'll go to the ignition system, because then we'll have to add in the coils. I'll be back in a second because I didn't bring any tools like an idiot. So as far as soldering goes, I've soldered before. It was adequate at best. It's not professional soldering at any whatever caliber. I'm still going to keep checking with Dad every time I do kind of some things, just to make sure that everything's right. It's always good to have a double check and triple check, especially with wiring, because I've never done it before to this amount. The wiring that I did for the last bike was literally a few wires, that when I connect the battery to it, it doesn't all catch on fire, and in which case I'll just leg it in that general direction, jump over the wall, run across the motorway, and just pray that my youth upholds Dad's adrenaline and he doesn't catch me and just not come back again. So definitely need to make sure that it's done properly. I know you're thinking this is probably not the right way to do it. You're probably right. I'm having to solder it using the frame as kind of like a table, because there's not much else. I don't have a small enough table that I can put here and solder each wire onto. So yeah, desperate times. So we're done wiring. The ICM is wired in. The starter, both of the safety starter switches are wired in. Everything's wired in except for the starter solenoid. So Dad's gonna have to do some relay, lots of relays, cool. stuff. So he's probably going to do that off camera. So the wiring harness is practically complete for the ignition side of things and also the starter relay side of things. So that is it for this episode with the Honda Shadow. Let me not set fire to my pot. The soldering iron was right there. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time. Bye. Thank you for ruining my audio.